College Avenue, San Angelo, Texas, for the purpose of considering the posted agenda items. This meeting is called to order at 8:30 a.m. Our invocation this morning will be given by Bill Proctor. He's a retired pastor from First Presbyterian Church here in San Angelo, and now is presiding over the New Hope Presbyterian Church in San Saba. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. Well, good morning. Let's begin with prayer. Lord God, as the members of the San Angelo Development Corporation and its professional staff meet together this morning with members from the community, bless them for their work and efforts on behalf of this city that we call home. We know how fortunate we are to live in a community that is so unique and enriched with so many special qualities, from Goodfellow to ASU to the annual rodeo to the varied cultural opportunities, including the symphony, the art museum, and the ballet, and so much more. We thank you for the many blessings that are ours, even in this year marked by flooding rains and the loss of life and the damage to so many homes and businesses. Be with those who are still recovering and give them strength for the job before them. Now I ask that you guide these good people in their efforts to promote and make San Angelo an even better place to live and work, and make us good citizens in this life, so that one day we may also become your good citizens in the life to come. For we make our prayer in your great and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Bill. All right. You ought to consider doing that for a living. We now open public comment. Issues of items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens who have registered for public comment prior to the start of this meeting should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items from citizens who have registered for public comment prior to the start of this meeting. Mrs. Navarez, do we have anybody for public comment?
Yes, sir, we do. Jamal Shumpert.
Jamal Shumpert, SMD3. Today, I just came up here to talk to you guys about maybe reaching out, a possible opportunity actually, for flag football. As you know, 2028, the Olympics is going to be hosting flag football here in America. From my research, I've looked up the flag football stadiums that IFAF have, International Federation of American Football. They don't have any specifications or any designs or any like legitimate models where you go here for the Olympic tryouts or you go here for the Olympic Games. Whereas in track and basketball, you have Olympic qualifying stadiums and arenas. I'm pretty sure they're going to move towards specifying Olympic arenas for flag football sometime in the future, pretty soon. What I would like you guys to do is send representatives maybe to see if they would like to put a stadium with several flag football fields here in San Angelo. We wouldn't have to use any of our tax money, but San Angelo does have a pretty good flag football recreation. They're pretty good at flag football. I can tell you that. I was really good at regular football, but flag football, regular football, a little bit different. You don't get to hit them, so you don't knock them off that track too much. But anyway, the reason I talked to you guys about this is because the city council wanted to do more things for the youth, and having about 10 flag football fields where the actual city itself doesn't have legitimate flag football fields, we're using the schools. I think it would be worth a shot to see if they would like to build an Olympic-style flag football stadium here, or even talk them into it, because I know for a fact if you're going to go into the Olympics, you're going to have that business model legitimized, and you're going to have legitimate stadiums, not some high school stadium, some high school flag football stadium. But yeah, that's all I came to talk to you about on the public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamal. Any comment from the table? Would you like to put any of that on a future agenda item?
My only question was to clarify the association that Jamal mentioned. Sorry, I didn't ask you when you were up here, Jamal.
It's the International Federation of American Football. They pretty much make all the rules for American football, point blank. And the reason I'm telling you this is because Europe has quite a bit of teams that's going to be in the 2028 flag football team. They got quite a bit of sites.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jamal.
All right, we'll now move directly to today's consent agenda. Consider approving the regular meeting minutes for September 10. Consider approving the July 25 financials. Consider approving the August 25 financials. Consider approving a business factory incubator lease agreement by and between the City of San Angelo Development Corporation and RDZ Smart Homes LLC, doing business as Electrician Expert Services, and authorizing the board president or designee to execute all necessary documents. Consider approving an amended business factory incubator lease agreement by and between the City of San Angelo Development Corporation and Branded Company to include an additional office space, and authorizing the board president or designee to execute all necessary documents. It is my understanding that if we do lease these remaining spaces, we will be full. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, those are our consent agenda items. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to pull the August financials. I've got a question on that. Hoping that Tina or Finance could help answer, please.
All right, we'll move the August financials and discuss them immediately after this item.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, less item C.
Rick?
Second.
Director Lassiter and Director Stribling? I'm sorry, I'm C. Okay. We'll
Hold on
move
one
item
moment.
C. We have a motion and a second.
Hold on one moment. I also have public comment as well.
Oh, okay.
And I have public comment for C, D, and E. That would be Jamal Shumpert.
All right. We'll address that when we get there.
Okay.
For,
All right, can I have a vote on the consent agenda?
So it's on C and E?
C, D, and E. Yes, sir.
Okay. So, yeah,
On
before
consent.
you. Yeah, so I think you bring him up to talk about D and E, and then when we discuss C, he could come talk about that one.
Okay. Come on, Jamal. I thought you were talking about deeper in the agenda. I apologize.
No, you're
I thought the same too, Mr. Mayor, too. For C, sorry about this, you guys.
this would be for D and E.
For D and E, I just had a positive comment. I think it's good that you're working with RDZ Homes for our accessibility needs, especially with the elderly and disabled, because they can upgrade the electrics. We really do need electricians here. I remember one time at a city council meeting, this is guys talking about how our actual government entities are hiring people who aren't licensed to do electricity work. That's going to be extremely important in the future. But in E was just a simple comment about making sure that you all have enough space in your business factory for other businesses to come in, because once you lease up all your rooms, then you can't necessarily help that person with a space. I see where that person already has 2 spaces and they're going for a third, or is it 1 space and they're going for a second? I wasn't sure, but I just wanted to just keep a careful eye and make sure that you could help out all businesses. Thank you.
Any comment from the board? All right. Am I clear?
Yes.
Let's do a vote. We have a motion and a second. If you'll approve the consent agenda items without item C, will you say aye?
Aye.
If not, will you say nay? Are there any abstentions? And it is done. All right, let's go to item C of the consent agenda as we've moved that out, approving the August 2025 financials. Do we have a representative to discuss those? Tina, are you available? Director Stribling, you have a question?
Yes. So there's a P&L statement that includes the budget for both of the funds. Under actual month, the expenses that are delineated for the month of August appear to reconcile to the disbursement listings, except for on the ballot fund, the $279,000 that's shown to be spent in August for water rights does not show to be dispersed.
Been accrued. It's been accrued as a payable.
Okay. And then there's a West Texas Water Partnership line item for $200,000.
Yes.
Is that accrued as well? I don't believe it was paid last year, and it hasn't been paid through August of this year, and I'm just wondering if it's going to be.
So that's just an amount that we set aside. The water fund budgets that amount for West Texas Water Partnership. And so we budget whatever they budget so that in the case that they have expenditures, we will reimburse them for those expenditures.
But we haven't had
We haven't had much
expenditures.
activity. We will make sure by year end to make sure if there is any activity in the water fund that we go ahead and reimburse that.
Okay. That's all I had.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions on that item? Thank you for bringing that up. We'll now vote on item C from the consent agenda, if you will approve that item. Jamal has public comment. I'm glad you guys are here today.
Jamal Shumpert, SMD3. I was just looking at the tax analysis at, I think, the first page of your sheet. And what I was talking about last time is what should I say? How could I say this? The consistent months that you have where you bring in the same tax revenue is November, January, March, and May. Those are the months you can target to maybe sponsor an event and bring in more tax revenue. So you can see maybe if you sponsor an events, you could maybe y'all are doing better than downtown San Angelo in sponsoring events. Maybe you should get into that. Maybe not, but as far as it looks, all the other months are volatile. Sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down. I would try to find a way to keep the tax money going during this recessionary style time until at least March, May, when there's a new May when there's a new Federal Reserve. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Now, do we have a motion that? Motion to approve. Second. Motion from Director Lewis and a second from Director Mahaffey. If you will approve C, will you say aye? Aye. If you will not, will you say nay? And it is done. Thank you. All right, now let's move to the regular agenda. Item A. See, I was into these ABCs. Item A, presentation and update regarding the housing study conducted by Community Development Strategies. Michael Pratt, the Managing Director of Community Development. Is he in the room?
Thanks. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm with CDS Community Development Strategies. We've got, I can just give a brief intro if y'all would like, or we can just get started, whatever you'd like to do.
Give us an intro.
Okay. I work for, like I said, CDS. We're a small consulting firm out of Houston, and we do economic development, urban planning, and real estate consulting. We've done a lot of work for Costa DC over the years, and in 2019, we did our first housing study, a comprehensive housing analysis, a product that we call a ResinTel. So in 2024, we spoke with Mr. Dane about updating that, and so we really didn't get started on the work until the beginning of this year. So the contract is a 2024 update, but a lot of the work we really mostly did in this year, 2025. And so I'm going to present to you guys the findings of our housing study update. The purpose of the housing study is basically just to collect and organize in a credible way by an uninterested third party the housing market data for San Angelo. We match that to the local economy so that we can have a better understanding for developers, for builders, for property owners, for planning and zoning, for policymaking, and for the EDC, how we can align the housing market with our local economy. And so that's kind of the purpose of the study, and that is the data that I collected, analyzed, and we've got some recommendations just on, best practices for cities and things that EDCs might be able to do to incentivize affordable housing, and things that would encourage the type of housing growth that we need to align with the local job market, because primary demand for housing in any local economy is primarily the workers. Okay. I apologize. This is not a pretty presentation with pictures or graphs. It's pretty much all text, which I know is a big no-no for PowerPoint presentations, so I apologize. It doesn't mean that I hate you guys or disrespect you. I respect you. I like you. So please don't feel any disrespect by all the text slides. We've got about 20, so try and spend about a minute on each slide, and then if there's any questions or discussion afterwards, we can do that.
Well, thank you for the warning.
Yes. So just market overview, we've got about 44,000 existing units, and they're pretty much split 60-40 owner-renter. Population growth over the years has been, pretty flat. However, the county has seen a lot of growth population-wise, and of course that's driven mostly by what's going on in San Angelo with ASU and the Air Force Base, your large healthcare industry, small businesses, local businesses, and your significant, industrial output from local manufacturers. So that's all driving job growth, which a lot of it is, which we'll get into the data later in the presentation. The workers, who work here, based on their incomes, that kind of determines what type of housing would be in most demand and what they can afford. Housing stock in San Angelo is old. Almost 60% of the units were built before 1980. So even in places that don't see a lot of rapid population growth, if you do have an older housing stock, that does drive demand for housing because people need to replace that existing housing. And I think that replacement need could be on the rise, especially in older neighborhoods with that existing aging stock. Everything, when a house gets built and all the houses in the neighborhood get built in the same time, and everything's rated for 25 or 30 years, right? So if a house is over 30 years old, it's likely that they need a new roof, they need new insulation, they need new HVAC systems, all this stuff. So I think that's something to keep an eye on in your older neighborhoods with the existing housing. Median sale price in 2025 is $240,000. That's up from $157,000 in 2015. There's been a large decline in the stock of homes, 160,000 and less, which are going to be your, entry-level, first-time home buyers, folks that are moving here, for their first job, maybe rent an apartment, want to buy their first house out of college, married, just had a kid, need to buy a house. So that entry-level stock is what we want to be able to have that kind of filtering effect of people, moving here or growing their families and being able to buy their first home. So the increase of, homes priced $300,000 and more has increased significantly as far as the share of home sales in those price bands. As far as rents go, so CoStar data is what we use to gather the multifamily data. That data says that the market occupancy is around 92%, which is healthy. You want to have some vacancy so that way people have a place to rent if they, like I said, move here or expand their family or what have you. However, when we go and we did our field research in April and go and interview individual, apartment complexes and talk to the leasing agents there, most of the people we talked to, they said, we're full. We're 95% or 98% or 100% full. So what I believe is happening is there's some maybe underperforming properties, maybe older market rate complexes that have higher than average vacancy, just maybe because they're not optimally managed or had the types of upgrades or, tenant change upgrades that typically happen. And so that can lower, the occupancy of some complexes and, make it look overall like, hey, we've got pretty low occupancy. But when you dig down into it, really, the most desirable places, the most affordable places, the places in the best condition that people can afford are all full. And so, as a housing market analyst, that would indicate that there's likely demand for additional rental units. Naturally occurring affordable housing, that's that existing older stock of, single-family rental homes, older apartment buildings, and this is really providing the affordable housing supply for the city. And so preserving those existing homes is very important. This is a map in the report, tons more information in the report than what's going to be in this presentation, so I'd defer to the report if there's more information or data that people want to see, but this is just a map of apartment complex locations based on the number of units and the type of complex that is. So, market rate, affordable, subsidized, and also mobile homes are on there as well. So again, looking at the rental market, we've got, about 800 affordable units, which seems a little low. So if we wanted to target, let's say 15% of our rental units affordable, that would put us at, about 1,650 units. So we would need about 850 more affordable units to get to that kind of 15% share of, affordable units in our rental market. As I explained, CoStar data says it's 92%, but when you really start looking at individual properties, most of them are full. The ones that are maybe less desirable, not optimally managed, have a little bit lower occupancy, so they're not really, we're not getting as much supply out of those properties as we should be or could be. As far as housing affordability, yes?
Mind going back to the previous slide? See no occupancy or any indication under the Goodfellow line?
Goodfellow has 250 units. I was not able to get that information isn't in CoStar, I guess, because that's base housing, and so they don't, I guess, share their property data. I did send several emails to try to gather this data. There's a lot of information in the report about Goodfellow as far as how much the officers and other folks on the base are getting as far as their housing allowance. And like I said, we've got some more information about Goodfellow, but no market data for the 250 units that they've got there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
One more question on that.
But they're
chart.
full. I'm sorry, they're full. They're 100% full.
So whenever you did your calculation on the occupancy at the bottom, you didn't take into that account?
No, I didn't put a zero there for
Okay.
Goodfellow, no.
Thank you.
But it's 100% full. All 250 of their units are full. And that's what we're seeing is that, local workers have to compete with Goodfellow and ASU for rental housing because there's not enough rental housing at Goodfellow or ASU on base or on campus to house everybody, right? And if they grow, if they add people, as enrollment has been growing year after year at ASU, then now you've got ASU and Goodfellow also, workers, healthcare workers, people that are moving here for jobs, they're all competing in the rental space, right? And so that's why the rental market is so tight, and that's why, having enough rental housing is really what's going to help cool the market. When we got all those apartments, Creek 27 and Wolf Creek in 2019, that's why we didn't see the overheating of the housing market in San Angelo that we saw in a lot of other places during COVID. Even though the prices did jump, they didn't jump as much as they would have if we didn't get that new supply of rental units. And, Creek 27 and Wolf Creek, they're full, right? And they leased up in like record time, which again, as a market analyst, would indicate that there's excess demand for rental units that we're not reaching.
All right, thank you.
And so again, that's going to drive the price up, right? When demand is high and supply is low, is what generates, that increase in pricing. So based on the median income of San Angelo, about $62,000, an affordable home, which is not more than 30% of someone's income, would be $185,000. So that's really the price that is in most demand. Is a $185,000 home. And of course, we know builders in San Angelo have a tough time building anything under $250,000 or $225,000. So that's kind of that gap here that we're seeing between the cost of what they can build and what we're actually what people can afford. Same thing for the rental prices. Now, most renters, the median income for renters in San Angelo is $44,000, much less than homeowners. So for a person making $40,000, $1,000 to $900 a month is that's 30% of their income, right? So once they go over that, now their cost burden, their housing cost burden, they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent. And so again, the supply of those rentals and those single-family homes has shrunk over the last 10 years. Again, 15 to 20. We'll look at the employment data later, but this is. Most of there's 8,000 or 9,000 retail workers in the county, and so they're not making any more. If they're making $15 or $20 an hour, I'd say they're probably doing pretty good. But even at that, they can't afford a $1,000 a month or $900 a month apartment. Talking about the housing cost burden, 20% of owners were housing cost burden. 47% of renters in San Angelo pay 30% or more of their income on housing. So almost 50% of renters in San Angelo are paying 30% or more on housing. As I said, 45% of renter households earn less than $50,000 annually, and that's compared to 34% of owners. And again, that's the median household income that I mentioned, the kind of contrast that we see between homeowners and renters. So, homeowners are doing pretty well. Renters are having a tougher time. Same theme, 175,000 to 250 is really where most of the demand is for single-family homes, and then that 900 to 1,200 a month rental unit is really where most of the demand is. It's tough, like we said, to build a single-family home for under 225 to 250. So job growth, again, I have the strong sense that it's job growth that's generating, the demand for housing that we need to make sure that we're, keeping up with. One new housing permit for every 2 new jobs is considered sort of a balanced market. That's what the National Association of Realtors says. You've been keeping up with that, so it's hard to say that San Angelo hasn't permitted enough housing. It looks like from 16 to 23, y'all did, and a big bulk of that, obviously, like I said, came with Creek 27 and with Wolf Creek, and then all the other single-family homes that have been built. But since 23 to now to 25, I think permits have fallen off a bit. Obviously, 2020 we peaked, but we're back down to 200 or 300 permits a year. Again, so we've got job growth, COVID, everybody lost jobs, but by 2022, y'all were back. So all the new job growth that's happened in 23, 24, 25, that's all greater than what you had pre-COVID. So Tom Green County has the most jobs it's ever had in its history, right? 50,000 jobs. You've never had this many jobs in the county ever in your history. And so we're seeing, I guess you could say, historic, job growth in the county, especially in the last 2 or 3 years. Like I said, this is all new jobs that are putting us over what our pre-COVID employment number was. And then we match that up with permits and see that, the last few years, permits have fallen. So the way that I calculated housing demand, how many units of housing do we need? We looked at the job growth from 22 to 25, so that was close to 4,000 new jobs in that span. That would generate, if we're using this ratio, 1,800 units, demand for 1,800 units. And so then we split that by, if 45% of those were rental units, 55% were single family, this is how many units we would have demand for, and then these are the attainable or affordable prices that we would need to see to serve our local economy. Now, looking into the future, 25 to 30, we've got kind of 3 scenarios, right? Conservative, aggressive, or average job growth. And so if we had, either one of those scenarios, then we've extrapolated out what that, housing demand would be over those years. And again, if one company comes in and that's 600 people, or one company comes in and that's 800 or 1,000 people, I mean, that's just one company. So I think that's a pretty fair assessment of what, future job growth trends may look like. So I created this table. These are all the employment sectors in Tom Green County, and of course, most workers in the county work in San Angelo. And then we've got number of employees employed in those sectors, their average annual income, and then the affordable home and for sale prices for those workers. And as I mentioned, you're looking at, healthcare's decent pay, but once you get into retail, accommodation and food, hospitality, education, these are your, 3 of your four largest employment sectors, and they're also the lowest paying. And so again, this is why we're seeing this demand for lower priced for sale homes and rental units, because, the bulk of our employment are folks that make between, $20,000 and $40,000 a year. And they can't afford a house, right? There is no affordable home price for those incomes unless they get married or have dual incomes or get a degree or get a skill and, increase their wage. And of course, that's what we want people to do with local economic development, but we've got to have the housing market that can allow those maybe families who can come in and say, maybe, I can go to ASU and maybe I can get a certification and maybe I can get an apartment and maybe I can get married and have kids and buy a house, right? And so we want to have a housing market that allows those maybes to materialize and happen for people to put down roots, and that's how we're going to, develop our economy locally. So just key conclusions. I've kind of repeated these same things throughout this whole presentation. There's so much more information in the report. There's no way that I could, put it all into a presentation. So, I've done the best I could with this. I think planning and zoning has a lot of good ideas. I think they're working on some things. They're working on their permitting software so that, the permit data is more available and, things can be submitted online, signed online. But we want to make sure that we cut down the cost of regulation, right? If the cost of regulation for building a home is 15 or 20% of the home, we want to reduce that as much as we can. So, lowering minimum lot sizes, liberalizing your single-family zoning to allow for, people to come in with the info program and build new duplexes and fourplexes, in existing neighborhoods, or, take a 50-foot lot and, maybe demolish an old structure and subdivide it into two 25-foot lots. And now you have two smaller, more affordable homes where one, larger 50-foot lot used to be. These are the types of things that cities are doing. This is best practice in land use and housing development to allow for these missing middle housing types, which are not just big, giant 250-unit apartments. If we had 250 ADUs scattered throughout a neighborhood, that's not going to put a strain on, existing infrastructure, because these neighborhoods already have streets, they already have utilities, right? They already have pipes. And so theoretically, we can cut down the cost of housing production by, allowing the market to come in and provide smaller homes, rental units, things that our local workforce really wants and needs, but sometimes the codes don't really allow to the number that we really need, to meet that demand. So again, reducing that, the minimum lot size. We do have special single-family zones that do have smaller than, 50-foot lots, but that's just, these are just things to keep in mind and to make sure that we're doing best practices as far as, allowing housing to get built that we need. And I think that's it. Yeah.
I've been sitting here thinking about the things that you've shown us, and am I correct in my thinking that if we were to, in a public-private partnership, provide 250 units on Goodfellow, would that then decrease the demand on housing for Goodfellow in the retail establishment and free up some of this?
Yeah,
issue?
more student housing and more base housing would keep them from competing for single family rentals in older neighborhoods, or renting an apartment, in Wolf Creek or Creek 27, because there's nowhere else for them to live, And if a base officer is getting $2,000 a month, housing allowance, then they can go outbid, a local worker who's making, $30,000 or $40,000 and don't have $2,000 a month to pay for an apartment or a single family rental. But yes, I would say that base housing, rental units, because a lot of these folks they're coming in and out, right? They're not staying here forever. But as that stuff grows, as their missions grow and they need more people, we want to be able to have housing that accommodates them so that, again, they're not out competing for rental housing against local workers.
Any other questions from the table?
I've got one. So a number jumped out at me in your report on page 12 that regulation is 25% of the cost, which that's a stunningly high number. And you said something that's a little lower when you were talking 15 to 20%, which seems better, but it still seems out of whack.
Yeah,
if you think about labor and materials, it ought to be 80% of the cost, and there's not enough room for all that. So
yeah.
How do we line up with other communities that you've dealt with in terms of regulation costs?
There's been a wave of zoning reform throughout Texas. Lubbock is the one that I like to point people to because they've allowed duplex, fourplex, and small lot homes in all single-family zones now. So all single-family zones, you can build a small. In West Lubbock, Upland, and I think it's 40th or 140th, far west Lubbock, they're building new homes for $165,000. They're small homes. They don't have a garage, they're maybe 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but they're brand new. They have a lot. They have a front yard, a backyard. They're in a brand new neighborhood. And so, the 50-foot lot minimum, I think that's arbitrary, and that's not a best practice anymore. Mandating that every new home be the smallest home we can build is 50 foot, that's not optimal, because that caps how low the home can be sold for, right? If we can't build anything less than a 5,000 square foot lot, that's just going to make it more expensive. But like I said, if we can buy a 50-foot lot and subdivide it and put 2 smaller houses that are more affordable as opposed to one, $300,000 or $350,000 house, that's the type of land use regulations that would be a best practice to allow, especially with the infill program. Y'all have got a great infill program, but I think, again, this is, for lack of a better word, liberalizing the single-family zoning, allowing a variety of those missing middle housing types, that those can't be built on a 50-foot lot, right? All those things, and allowing ADUs. There's pattern zoning. There's things where, so like let's say we want to create an ADU program. We'll create a pattern zone where we the city pre-approves elevations, right? So maybe there's 5, and a builder can come in, say, I want to be in the ADU program. I've got the lot. Everything meets the requirements for the program. And then city says, okay, pick your elevation. They pick this elevation. They said, this is the one I want to build. Well, the permit, the blueprints, everything comes all in one package, right? And so that's it. It's a by right development. They come in, they pick which one they want, they pay whatever, a couple $100 for their fee, and everything's in it, and then they can go home and hire a contractor and build, and everything's approved, and it doesn't have to go through this rigorous approval process because everything is essentially pre-approved, right? And now that would just be for like ADUs, but there's cities like College Station that do that for all types of, housing. So there, again, a lot of this is in the report, and I'm available at any time, phone or email, if any of y'all have more questions, or anyone watching on YouTube or in the audience, or residents. My email address and contact information is in the report. So anytime you have any questions about any of this stuff, or advice, feedback, whatever, I'm always available.
Mike, I think you've touched on a lot of things. I'm sure we could talk for hours about a lot of aspects of this study. One of the things you touched on, I know the city is working on reviewing the residential zoning classifications and potentially adding or adjusting to smaller lot sizes. What we've seen in our community is that there's an inordinate amount of cost associated with infrastructure, roads, and utilities. And to your point, that 50-foot lot is expensive when you're dragging utilities and paving roads. If you can narrow those lots down, it would help with those costs considerably. There are a couple of observations. If you go to there's a rental market trends slide that you've got in your presentation, and it's got a chart on it.
All right.
So if you look over at the average rent per square foot, there is no gap between affordable and conventional. Can you speak to that, and in your observations with other markets? That looks really unusual. Is that because of our old apartment stock? Is that what the market bears?
In most markets, the per unit square foot cost to build affordable is typically higher than market rate.
Right.
Okay, and that's why CDS, Mike Pratt, tries to preach, what can we do with our regulations to allow the market to build enough housing and the types of housing that we really need and can afford, so that we're not depending on HUD or housing authority to provide the housing that we need. And in a lot of places, we've seen, like Lubbock, that there are ways to cut the red tape, cut the regulations. You know, I live in Houston. Houston has no zoning at all. It's all by right development. If I can buy the land and I can pass health and safety inspection, building inspection, I can build whatever I want. And that's why Houston is one of the most affordable, cities in America, because the market is not stupid. Builders are not stupid. Builders are not going to build something that's not going to sell or not going to rent because their reputation is online. Their living is on the line. So they're going to create a product that they know people want. And with talking to your local builders, the stuff that people want in San Angelo are garden homes, patio homes, duplexes, very small homes that don't require a lot of maintenance. But if we can only build those in certain areas where the infrastructure is very costly and the surrounding property is so expensive that the cheapest we can build a patio home is $300,000, well, then we're not really reaching where the demand really is.
Okay, so on the affordable home price target, you talked about how our average kind of entry-level home price is $225 to $250. The square footage is obviously a function of that cost. So can you give us an idea of what you think an adequate square footage home would be to reach this entry-level price of $185,000?
I think, like I said, the stuff in West Lubbock was what I would look at if I were you. A 900 square foot home is not as small as you think it is.
Okay.
So 900 to 1,000 square feet, again, with, no garage on a small lot, that's an affordable home, and it's not subsidized, and it's not depending on outside funds.
Yep.
That's something that the market can provide if the regulations allow you to build on a small lot, a small home on a small lot. Right now, I don't know that the zoning in San Angelo is aggressive enough, if you want to say it that way, to allow for those missing middle housing types. Because if you look at that picture, it's got the square footage of each of those unit types on that chart.
Yes. For the rental housing.
And that's rental and for sale.
Okay.
A lot of y'all's rental units in San Angelo are single family rentals.
Right.
So a Creek 27, it's technically multifamily, but those are single family units, and they're small. Right? Again,
Yes.
they're small. They don't have garages. But none of these units are more than 2,000 square feet. None of these. Even the ones closer to the left side are, like I said, the ADU could be 400 square feet in someone's backyard.
Okay,
But
so next
I would say
question.
900 to 1,000 square feet. That's technically anything under, and this is in the report, anything under 1,800 square feet or less is considered an entry-level home.
Right.
Okay, so 900 to 1,000 square feet, I think that's.
But to my point, we're building 1,800 square foot houses.
Yes.
And the cost of building those houses is considerably more than
Yes.
900 to 1,000 feet, right?
Correct.
Okay, so the housing cost, when you talk about housing cost, on the rental side, it would be rent, right?
Yes.
Doesn't include utilities.
No, our
Okay.
analysis does not include utilities, no.
On the owner side, would that be mortgage, taxes, and insurance?
We use the ACS data for housing cost burden. I would have to look and see what they put in there, but I believe it's only the mortgage. Now, when I do the affordability table
Yes.
for what can San Angelo workers afford for a single-family home, that is 100% comprehensive mortgage model. I've got the PMI, and that's on a FHA model because we want to see what can the person who can what people who have moderate incomes who can, who need FHA financing and need a 3.5% down payment, that's what I want to model and see, what the cost would be for someone who can barely qualify to buy a home in San Angelo. What prices, home prices, can they afford under an FHA model? And so that's what that table is in the report.
Okay.
And yes, that has the 2025 property tax rates.
Yeah.
It's 100% all the costs. The census data, I don't think has that. My table that I estimated affordable home prices for local workers does.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, I had one question. So you did the housing study. When was the last one that you did?
In San Angelo, we did in 2018, we worked on it. I think 2019, it was complete. But are you saying what's the most recent one just other than here?
I guess my question is when you did that housing study versus this one, how many of the same issues did you see? Have any of those been addressed from the last housing study?
Look, I had the same sort of recommendations, and so the answer is no, and that's sort of like when I met with the Builders Association, they're like, "Why are you doing this study again?" They didn't listen to anything you said, nothing changed. But I understand that local government takes a while to change, and y'all are looking at planning and zoning is looking at the single family zoning regulations, and so and permitting, and so that's what we focused on the first time, is you don't want to be doing anything as a local government to increase the time it takes or the cost it takes to construct new housing. And so whatever we can do to lower the cost of regulations and the time it takes to approve, review, and permit new housing, that's going to help us speed up the process and lower the cost. A company can move here overnight, right? A company can move here and bring 600 people overnight. We can't build 600 new homes overnight, and so we need to be as quick and nimble with our regulations as we can.
So we need to be having conversations with planning and zoning and
Yeah.
permitting and.
I would recommend some sort of task force, like a housing task force, that the EDC can create or the chamber can create, and so you can have a representative from SAR. You've got great local real estate agents, a representative from the Builders Association. You've got great local builders, a representative from, the EDC. Y'all got a great EDC, staff and board. So you've got all the pieces, but, having Mike Berry or Mike Looney on there, having one of you guys on there, having a local builder or two, and planning and zoning and city council, and have a person from each, team kind of represented in this task force to make sure that all the stuff that we talked about is being looked at and focused on and worked on a consistent basis.
And to make sure it's not just conversation.
Yeah, that's kind of why we do these housing studies, because in all these local markets, everybody talks about this all the time. And so we're documenting in a report what everybody's been saying, what all the employers are saying, what the builders are saying, what the EDC is seeing and saying. And I think we did a really good job of it. I was tasked with doing an update to the original one. This is not an update. I put a lot of extra things in here that were not in the original one. So a lot of analysis, a lot of strategies and recommendations that I provided for this update that was more than an update. So I feel confident about the work I did for y'all, and hopefully it will help. Last time in 2019, I think you guys put it on the website. The developer from Georgetown saw it, came and built Creek 27. So sometimes it's as simple as just making the information available so that, again, everything that everyone kind of talks about is on paper, and now everyone has it available to them, all the data, all the analysis, all the recommendations, so everyone can get on the same page with housing.
Okay. Mr. Pratt, thank you for your work. Well done, well done. I would like, if it's okay with the board, to instruct staff to make sure that this does get on our website and gets, very good. That's what I like to see.
As
Already
a
on.
follow-up to that, does everybody get it? All the city departments, everybody that's involved in this? Does everybody see this? I mean, do we share it with everybody directly, not just put it on the website, but give it to them?
Certainly, we will share it. The question is about the political will for the action that you're talking about. I think a stakeholder group is absolutely appropriate. In fact, just several weeks back, we had a meeting with a builder and a realtor whose names you would recognize, and they were seeking solutions for affordable housing construction. And so I think the appetite to participate in a stakeholder group is there. And it's just a question of spinning that up and addressing it. And of course, affordable housing is an element for workforce. And we've got our workforce guy right here on the front row. And so that it does fit into a conversation that we'd be a stakeholder in.
And to your point, you know, I mentioned earlier that I know the planning department is looking at the residential zoning classifications and making some changes there. I'm not sure about the timeline, but it seems like sometime early next year, some of those recommendations are going to flow through the planning commission and up to the council, hopefully.
I think they are working on a major update, and the question would be, can we get some of these changes made before that whole plan is done? That would be part of that.
Yeah, and I think Mike's touched on some aspects of regulation that fall outside of those efforts. Streamlining the permitting and approval process, and getting plans out of the city in a timely manner would be, you know, a really important thing to try to look at and address. It's not being discussed at this point, but I think would be helpful.
I think they track that, and for a residential, I think they're more than competitive.
Yeah.
The question is, how do we overcome some of those inherent infill issues, which
Yes.
I think Mike talked about extending utilities.
Yes.
And you know, the reason those infill locations weren't developed is because they were expensive at the time.
Yes.
And they remain expensive. And so what is the city's role in facilitating that? You know, to what extent is it a financial burden or obstacle or a regulatory? And I know that for some time now, more than months, our planning leadership has talked about a new view, a sustainable financial model associated with planning, wide lots with lots of street frontage.
Yeah.
Are financially difficult to sustain in the long term. They're losers from a tax perspective. So you want narrower lots. And so they've been advocating for that. And I think the will is there. I think the political will is there to have that discussion, and certainly spinning up a task force to support that discussion and possibly drive it on some of the issues would be not a bad idea.
Question, Mike, on page 100, you've got a highlighted comment that you're needing additional information from the city for the platted and approved or proposed or future use. Is that something you've requested from the city that you have not received, or do you anticipate updating this?
I've requested it a few times, but I think there's an issue with separating multifamily and single-family permits. I guess the system doesn't distinguish between the two, so separating them out is, I guess, difficult to do. I'm not certain. I think this is part of the reason maybe why they're updating, I guess, their software system for the permitting, is to be able to have, you know, data like this on hand to analyze. But yeah, typically, you know, we would get all of the new platted stuff so that we have some idea of what's the number of multifamily and single-family units that have been platted but haven't started construction yet.
So trying to build out the pipeline.
Yeah, just understanding what the existing pipeline is to know what,
Yeah.
future demand would be as far as, number of units go.
Well, I just think if a potential investor was trying to look at this report and this page is blank.
The pipeline would be important.
They're going, well, what can I do in San Angelo without having to drive here and talk to people on the ground, which that helps. But a
Certainly.
lot of times developers are looking at the data. If we had the data that showed them, we have the land, it's zoned right, here's how you can make money, boom, here comes 1,000 units, because the demand is there.
Yes.
But you've proven that in the rest of it, but over here on page 100, it doesn't show you where anything is.
Yeah, anecdotally, when we met with Aaron and the staff, they did, verbally tell us, that there was 4 multifamily projects that had been submitted and platted but just haven't started. A few were for financial reasons, financing. I think one was infrastructure, and then another I can't remember. It was difficult to get that information out of the notepad and into the report. And so it's easier, obviously, to just get that data like in a spreadsheet or something. And so if we can get that, obviously I can put that in and send out an updated document.
Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, I don't want us to fumble this report, just receive it and then drop it. Is there a specific item that you guys would like to pull out of this report for a future agenda?
Let's jump on the task force.
All right.
I think some direction about polling known stakeholders about the creation of a task force and their willingness to participate, and including our planning folks. Maybe we could get them to give us an idea what their timeline is, what their plan is, and how can we support that update. And then if they've got a timeline and objectives they've got, is there a separate track we would take some of those secondary items to support their update? We just have to see. So we have Rick Wise in the room today. Rick and I will talk about how can maybe we get an update from Aaron next meeting about what his plan is, and begin the discussion about how a task force might be utilized to support that.
Anything else you'd like to pull out?
So can we put that on the agenda for next month?
She's already got it.
Thank you, Nora.
Also, just to let you know that Mr. Pratt did offer, when he emailed me this past week, if you receive any calls from anyone, I have a hyperlink so that I can forward that to you, so that way anyone that wants a copy,
Why
I
don't you
can
go
send
ahead
that
and
to you.
just do a bulk email to us,
Will do.
and we'll have it at hand then.
Okay,
So
okay.
one final point on Matt's point on page 100. Can you get them to provide that information? Seems like somebody with a big G tablet can figure that out.
So, just to give a little background on that, the permits department gets hundreds of public information requests. So basically, they are inundated and we don't have the staff. So what they do is they pull what we have. If the system doesn't generate that, we can give those, someone can get all of those and sort through them, but it's going to take a ton of time. So it's not as simple as that, and unfortunately, we don't have the staff to do that, yet try to keep our permitting process on board. So we can look at it, but I cannot promise a time frame, and it's going to have to be pulling someone from doing their regular job to do that. But that's generally, it's not as simple as it may sound.
Forgive me for the way I'm about to put this, but this is important. And so maybe we need to do the tough work and get that done.
Well, why don't we take a look at what he's got and see if there's a way to shortcut to a useful arrangement.
Yeah.
Or if we've got to log the hours, then maybe we'll figure out how to do that. I know a guy who knows something about development.
Yeah, it just seems to me that we can put something on page 100 besides we can't get the information. Just the information we have, that we do have in an asterisk on the bottom of it that says, this is not complete information, but this is what we have, something like that.
If it'd be easier just to like set up a call with Aaron or somebody on the staff and I can just kind of take notes again, you know, if that would be easier and quicker, I could do that, you know.
We are about that all day long, and any information that's in there, I agree, we can either alter how it's phrased to show, you know, this is the number we have overall that includes these two categories. I think what he's looking for is trying to separate it, which is the problem. So yeah, it can be altered in that wording, and we're available all day long for those conversations whenever.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
There's one last thing that I didn't cover is I did do some extra like a housing market impact analysis of the flood, and so I don't want to take any more time, but just the takeaway from that is it's gonna increase demand for affordable housing even greater than what's already. So 900 homes, you know, that were impacted, and the vast majority of them were, you know, low to moderate income workers or older, you know, residents, senior citizens that had paid off their home, you know, for many, many years and don't have any house payment. And so these folks don't have, you know, $1,000 or $900 a month to go rent an apartment while their house that's paid off is getting fixed. And so again, this was 900 homes that were impacted, and the short of it is that it will probably increase rent in certain properties where these folks may try to go by 10 to 20%, and we're just going to see a big increase in demand for affordable housing.
All right. So task force on the future agenda, and is there anything else that I missed?
I might just add, and I'm not sure the board's aware, but the Development Services has a development task force that potentially meets monthly, and it's a pretty good combination of all mostly the home builders and a lot of other people involved in development. This is something, if we could ask to get it on their agenda, I think it's something that all those folks would be interested in at least discussing. And that could be a good start for assembling a task force. Not to say that we won't put it on our next agenda, but there is an avenue there already created where I think we can get some interest going there.
Thanks, Bob. Anything else before we move along? We have public comment. Jamal, will you come forward?
Jamal Shumpert, SMD3. The reason I'm here today is because I don't think there's any citizens that'll actually come. Most of the time, they don't know what you're talking about. But I've seen this over and over again. Each year, we go to ask the builders, what can we do to help them build more homes? Yet, the price of homes keep getting expensive. This guy did a great report. I mean, it's great. He was scratching his head nights trying to figure out the suggestions he could use. ADUs, accessory dwelling units. It will increase the traffic you have, also probably crime, domestic violence at that. You think your police want extra things they have to do because they're picking cats out of trees right now, beyond what they have to do. I really support the police. I don't want to add extra to their plate. Less regulations. Some of these regulations prevent deaths in case of a fire. All these things we're trying to do for the builders, we haven't yet sat down and created a citizens task force where it's just citizens, not someone who's in the real estate industry. Maybe do the people who are in real retail industries, like flipping your burgers, making your food. Ask them what do they need, because they will tell you it's better wages, better jobs, which come straight from this department. I can't preach to you guys, talk to you guys enough about how important it is to bring in higher paying jobs, to have a creative mindset, to change the trajectory of where we are going. We've put decades and millions of dollars into affordable housing. And over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been telling you to watch these people and watch what they're doing so you can understand what they're doing and whether it's effective or not, instead of them coming up here and tell you, yeah, this is effective. Well, this guy just told you from 2019 to 2025, you did nothing effective but put millions of dollars, tons of hours into this problem to make it worse. So I would say instead of creating a task force full of these business people, create one full of citizens who work these 14 or less an hour jobs. Because he was talking about 15 to 20, and those are mostly manufacturing and factory jobs. If you're at Sonic, it's like 8, 9. Some places even still minimum wage. And just so you can understand, as a board, we gave $100,000 to a company that pays their workers $10 an hour. Those are the types of things. Not to say that they didn't need it, but I'm saying we could have done much better over those years. Y'all are a new board. Y'all have the choice. Y'all can change. Y'all haven't made these same mistakes, but I will tell you, if you go in and get the business people, the same people who make money off of what you're trying to change, they're gonna do things best for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Shumpert. Anything else from the table? All right, we will receive that report. Thank you for your presentation, Mike. Next up is discussion regarding support for Goodfellow Air Force Base, and that is just a topic I wanted us to open up during this meeting. I have heard you say that you want to drive this bus. You don't want to just open your catcher's mitt and receive, but you want to come up with plans and ideas and thoughts that we can drive to city council and be creative in how we support our community. And I hear that, and I want to, I thought we could start with Goodfellow Air Force Base. I hear around the community that if we don't want to say the B word, there are topics of conversation on the Hill and in the Pentagon talking about how they reduce the places that they are providing force and training and that sort of thing. And I don't want Goodfellow to be on that list. So how do we support Goodfellow, and how do we, what kind of projects do we come up with? When we just heard the housing study, it seems to me that if part of our mandate is affordable housing and supporting the employment workforce in San Angelo, that those two things might be able to come together. I don't know the rules and regulations, Mr. Attorney and Mrs. Attorney, about what we can fund and what we can't fund, but is there something like that that we could do that would solve both the issues, would relieve housing demand in the retail community and support Goodfellow in their demand? If they are just squeaking because they are full with their housing, is there something we can do there? And that's just to open the conversation and see if maybe there are other ideas around the table that how we can support Goodfellow in our community.
So, Rick, I actually, after our discussion yesterday, went and looked at the act, and there is a project authorization for military bases, and it includes infrastructure improvements, land acquisition, buildings, or expenditures that, and then there's like a two-part that follows. It's creation or retention of primary jobs, and then there's a list of three things: promoting or supporting a military base in active use to prevent the possible future closure or realignment of the base, which I think is what you just touched on. And then attracting new military missions to a military base in active use, or redeveloping a military base that has been closed or realigned, which wouldn't apply, but those other two certainly do.
Thank you for that. It was, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago that we began seeking public-private partnerships between Goodfellow and the city of San Angelo and chamber and private individuals to create a better place for Goodfellow to exist. And I haven't heard a whole lot about that recently, but we jumped out in the country, in the nation, and led the whole process. And one of the reasons that we won the big award for community and base relations 3 times now, I think, and that is one of the things that promoted that award. So I'll open it up to the table. Do y'all know of anything that, or have thought of anything that we can do to support Goodfellow?
Mike, didn't we, about 20 years ago, we helped in the acquisition of the property that was north of the base where the last round of additional housing was constructed? Wasn't that a Co-City project 20 years ago?
Yeah, Matt, if you'd get out of my head, please. Well, that's what I was thinking about. I think Co-City bought the land and donated it in exchange for the promise to build. And that housing is, as I recall, constructed, owned, and managed by a private entity for the benefit of
Of the base.
the Goodfellow.
Right.
And as I recall, there is capacity on that footprint for more housing. But
Currently owned or not currently owned? The base owns it now or does not?
The developer owns it.
the developer could develop
Okay,
more.
right.
But it doesn't, I think the last time we talked about this, I think it doesn't meet the developer's numbers for a second round of building. And so I think whether as a Goodfellow stakeholder group or as a housing stakeholder group, it's appropriate to reopen that topic.
Well, we need to find out how many units are being taken up off base, and what that relief would be. I think that's the number he would need to know as how many units he could build or how many houses.
Or if the
I'm
numbers
thinking-
don't work, well, what do we need to do maybe from an infrastructure standpoint that might help his numbers work?
I agree.
It'd be nice to fill in the blank on his report too, like, can we get a Goodfellow to help us with that?
I think I say we, the community, I think pushed at a very high level to try to force the private entity to build more units because we felt like the demand was there. This isn't the first time we've felt a housing crunch. And previously that crunch was very much oriented around support for Goodfellow personnel. So I think it's absolutely the right time to open that conversation.
Could there be an opportunity for the development corporation to acquire the undeveloped land?
They
If
looked at that
developer
too.
doesn't want to
They
build it?
They didn't want to do that, and I think it's time to re-ask all of those questions. As I recall, Mike Boyd was very central in trying to drive a solution back then, and we may have to pick Mike's brain about opportunities for moving
Well, we
ahead.
certainly want to grab all the low-hanging fruit. If there's already land available, it's next to that area, and maybe we just need to further incentivize that development as opposed to trying to go out and do this again, find another piece of property, get another developer. I mean, there may be legitimate barriers that we could not overcome, the developer can't overcome, but we don't know unless let's re-engage the developer, and at the same time, what other development possibilities exist around the base that would help the base, help base housing. That's going to help housing throughout the rest of the community. It's a win-win if we invest there and we are permitted to do it. I'm all for that.
I think the other thing that might help with the base is to get a little better understanding of the housing needs. Is it apartments? Are the folks that are coming out here buying homes? Are they renting? Do they want to be close to the base? Do they want to live in Southwest San Angelo where there's more off-base activities?
Or is it dorms?
Right.
I mean, could go all the way from top to bottom, I would think.
I know the officer housing on base is lax a lot. And I don't know, because it's on base, that's a different challenge of how could we help do infill build or tear down rebuild, because some of that officer housing, you get a junior officer coming to town, and I mean, it's substandard. And I think that, I would be open, for how could we explore that? It's a greater challenge when it's on base as opposed to if you were doing a private development. But it's something we still, in talking to the Goodfellow commanders I've heard, they were like, man, if we could figure out how to fix that issue, that would make a lot of people happy.
According to what I've heard, there's a lot of officer level that will go off base because they don't want to live there. And so there's the demand on our retail product as well. Yep. I've also heard that there is need for support at Goodfellow that is much smaller than what we're talking about here. I don't mean to say that we don't need to reach for that kind of level of support, but there are other things that Mr. Lanius came to me about a list, 3 pages of things they wanted to do for Goodfellow, and I would like to invite him to our next meeting to go through those items and see if that is something we can help with as well. And so if it's okay with the table, we'll put him on our next meeting, next month's agenda, and continue to pursue this. Thank you, Nora. That's all I have for that discussion. Is there any other discussion on that item?
No, it's a great topic.
Okay,
Appreciate you bringing it.
all right.
Rick, I also have public comment on this.
Public comment. Mr. Shumpert, I assume?
Jamal Shumpert, SMD3. I'm not sure if they want to stay by the base, but the city just annexed over 1,000 acres. I'm not sure if that's going to be for the landfill in the future or what it's going to be, but we did annex over 1,000 acres in the spring. But I actually thought the Goodfellow conversation was about community engagement, and one thing I've been trying to do, well, I'm seeing if it's even feasible, if we'd have enough people, is to do things like community versus cops in certain types of games and sporting events, maybe even fishing and clay shooting. Maybe add the military into some of these games too and invite the public. I thought that's what this Goodfellow Air Force Base support agenda item was about. I'm not sure if that's on the guy you mentioned, if some of those things are on his list. I'm not sure, but I just thought it would be a good suggestion to bring them into the scope of these. And you could also use ASU, because ASU has a robust intramural program. But you can also offer them free registration fees instead of charging them at the San Angelo Recreation Department. That could be something you could look into doing, and they could be more engaged in the city. And also create a bulletin board of events and activities to do with, put those things on that event board for those people. I don't know if they already have one or not, but it just seems like they only go downtown to use a trolley and go to the bars. They don't seem like they know about a lot of the other events that SAPAC and everybody else holds. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move to C, update presentation, discussion, and possible action regarding affordable housing assistance for needed repairs to damage resulting from the July 4th, 2025 flooding of properties located within the designated flood area. Presentation by Stephanie Habby, Executive Director of Galilee CDC. Welcome.
Good morning. Okay. Quick update for you. Oh, how do I use this again? There we go. Okay. So we had, let me think. Sorry. Whoops. Oh, I don't like these things. All right. So we had, this was our original budget, was this 450. We broke it up over the front end work, the finished work, and then the admin work. So currently we have completed 7 jobs. to date totaling $43,496.23. I don't know what, that did not make your thing. We have 13 jobs out for bid at this moment. We're trying to use funds from the Salvation Army Disaster Recovery Group to pay for the materials of the roofs. They have coordinated with City Lumber in order to, they're going to pay for the materials and then we'll pay for the labor. So it stretches the money of COSA DC a little bit with another funder. We have about 75 active files on in our hands that we're working off of right now. 15 homes are out for assessment, which means what we do is we get a needs assessment in and we send someone out to do a home assessment to make a list of everything that needs to be done on that home so we know what we need to tackle first. And then over the weekend, we received 30 more needs assessments, so we have another group to go out for home assessments. Unfortunately, we're still finding homes that need the muck and gut work done. We have about 10 or 12 of them. We do have a team coming in next week that will be here to do some of those. Hopefully, we can catch all of them and finally be done with that part, but I think people are still, for whatever reason, never reached out at the beginning, and so even 3 months into this, we're still finding people who are just now talking to us. So we're still working on that part of it, but we feel confident that, we're going to continue to move forward. We have teams coming in. Starting the 20th, we have Texans on Mission that'll be here for 4 weeks to do some repair work, and then we have a group of Mennonites that are coming in for, I think, 3 months that'll be here to do work, and they can help rebuild complete homes as well. So we're excited to get that part of it kind of up and running. We're working on a lot of the roofs, a lot of the bathrooms, a lot of the plumbing issues that we're running into with the front end money before we end up on the back end finishing up these homes. So that's kind of where we are. Does anybody have any questions?
The group of Mennonites that are coming to our city, I understand that they have reached out to churches around our community and are using them for overnight stay. And I hate to hear that they're going to be sleeping on floors for 3 months in churches around our area. Is there anything that we need to consider doing for groups like that?
We have, TLC we just got everything taken care of. I think yesterday we're trying to pull the permits to put bunk trailers up at one of their sites with shower and laundry and stuff, which is obviously more comfortable. Right now, I know that group is working with Sierra Vista United Methodist Church, and they're housing them. So where they're housing them, I'm not sure, but most of the time they bring in air mattresses and stuff like that and cots. So I haven't heard that they need additional housing, but we certainly have opportunities with the bunk trailers that are coming in.
Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Appreciate all your work. Thanks, Ms. Hamby. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Do we have public comment?
Yes, sir. Jamal Shumpert.
I just came up here to say thank you, guys. The families really needed it. I stay in SMD 3 and SMD 4, but they really do need it. They were moderate to low income. Most of us are. Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Shumpert. Just for my reference, Nora, do we have public comment on remaining items? Which ones are we going to, so that I'll be ready?
D, E, F, and G.
Okay.
Rest of them. Oh, are you? Oh, okay. Change of plans.
All right.
No.
No more public
That's the
comment.
last
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to D, and we will receive report C. Let's move on to D and get an update, discussion, and possible action regarding the project for damage repairs needed as a result of the July 4th, 2025 flooding to businesses located in the designated flood area. Desiree Johnson will come and give us that report. She is Director of ASU SBDC. Also, Mike Looney. I don't see Mr. Looney in the room. Mr. Berry, will you be available for help with that report?
Any questions? Sure.
All right. So, welcome, Desiree.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us and including us in the agenda. And I'll kind of say too, not to speak on behalf of Mike Looney, but we've been working together very well over this whole process, along with the entire professional staff team at the board and everything we can do to support. So I just wanted to give an update that the SBA has renewed their lease. Y'all actually officially approved that in your consent agenda this morning. So thank you for that. I want to say that has been a really great thing to have what they call the Business Recovery Center, which is BRC as well, in the BRC building. It's going to bring a lot of information to what that building houses and the different resources that are available there all the time. So I expect, even though they've renewed their lease through October 27th, if they do evacuate at the end of the month, please keep in mind that Bob and myself and our SBDC team are still there to support those folks, as the economic injury loans will be available until April 6th of next year. So we have a good ways to continue to help support people there. The physical damage filing officially closed 9/28, which was an extended deadline. They are still technically accepting applications, so we haven't heard an official new extended deadline date. They are still accepting applications on the website. I think a big part of this is because they have recently released the Texas rural disaster. So that expanded additional counties surrounding Tom Green County. One of those was Concho, suffered a lot of damage, as well as Sonora. So those counties are now eligible for that same physical disaster. And I believe that's why they're still accepting applications on the original disaster declaration, which affected Tom Green County. I want to say that we're excited to support Mr. Looney and his efforts to outreach through SARMA, but there are also other eligible businesses that we'll be trying to support, as well as those conversations. In fact, it's on my to-do list to get a hold of him and say, how can we continue to support? He's done a lot of outreach directly with his SARMA members, who will be able to take advantage of the BREP program and the additional funding that y'all made available. So that was, we became aware that that was available as of September 28th. So hopefully we will start seeing requests come in if there are businesses that can apply. That's something our office can support. If they want to come in and get one-on-one assistance walking through that application, connecting them with Bob, whatever that may be, helping them get an idea of what to report and what damage to ask for, that's all stuff that we can provide. So we're happy to do that in conjunction with Bob and Mike and continue to just support our small businesses, or I should say big local businesses, right? So just as a reminder, anybody that is a business in San Angelo, typically 500 or fewer employees, can take advantage of these benefits, or programs. And then, of course, with COSA DC funding, they have to meet those eligible NAICS codes. I want to also say thank you to Matt and his team. They've done a tremendous job getting additional funding, to those small businesses. And as a reminder, I think one of the things that we can do is work very well hand in hand to make sure we're funneling resources where they need to go. So for example, if a business is eligible under the NAICS codes, let's encourage them to take advantage of this pot of funding as opposed to the San Angelo Area Foundation, which will open that up for other businesses who may not qualify under those same stringent requirements as the BREP program. So that would just be an example. So again, want to reiterate, we're a great place to send people. So if you have folks that are calling, we've also done a lot of outreach on the personal side as we made outreach calls, not just asking if the business was whole, but asking if their household was, and then their employees' houses. So we did a lot of relaying of information to those local resources. And so in addition to everything that Stephanie and her team is doing, and the COAG just continuing to be a resource for anybody that calls in that may not know where to go. And so we're at least able to help point them to those individual resources as well. Those folks can also apply for SBA physical disaster loans upstairs. So that's residential and business and renters. So if they don't have renters insurance, things like that, they can also apply for personal property damage. So any questions? All right, thanks,
All right,
gentlemen.
we'll receive that report. Thank you so much. No public comment then? Okay, all right. Let's move on to item E, discussion regarding public development planning. Michael Dane will come to the mic.
Do I have any slides on this, Bob, or just a wallpaper? Sorry. All right. Today's theme is, do we want to drive the bus, or what do we want to drive the bus on? Consistent with the talk about Goodfellow getting ahead and trying to lead the charge on some of these issues. We've been thinking that you can't get ahead of an issue if you don't know exists. So this item, we're going to talk about 2 issues. The next agenda item is actually far enough along that it involves a request for funding. But for this item, it's making you aware of 2 big projects that are going on. One of them certainly, I think, is going to resonate, and we may want to own that. But I've got Rick Wise here to kind of go over those and make you aware of them. Certainly, you're a community stakeholder. Whether or not you become a financial stakeholder is certainly a board decision. But we want to make you aware of 2, and then the third one will be a separate agenda item. So Rick, if you would. You want me to hand out? No, I'll do it tomorrow.
So Mike asked me to talk a little bit about these, just kind of piggybacks on what y'all are already talking about with your planning on housing, which I want to commend you on doing. As you know, just touching on that a minute, the city's been talking about an updated comp plan for how many years now? That is getting traction. So we've seen council actually starting to allocate some funding toward that. You see staff pursuing a grant application to increase that even more. And so we're hoping that will actually start happening. We'll know some things by the first of the year, which means y'all's information that you just put together could actually just really help spur that information that goes into that comp plan for the city. So thank y'all for doing that. Other than that, other than what Carl's going to talk about, Mike asked me to talk about a few things that are going on in the city to keep y'all abreast. The first one we'll talk about on your list is an event and venue feasibility study. So this is talking about the convention center, which has been a topic for some time as well. So the city basically has solicited requests for a proposal for professional services to determine the feasibility for creation of a hotel and conference, convention/conference center. They're looking at 2 locations. Of course, this study would look at, do you stay at your existing location and try to make that work, or do you go to a different spot? As most of you know, years ago, when we were doing the river project, we bought land there along the river. So the concept is looking at that location. This is something I think the city had hoped to maybe have done years ago, this type of moving this forward. This is an effort to make that actually happen. But the first thing you've got to do before you can pursue that one way or the other is to look at that feasibility of the site from multiple directions and then determine what type of facility might work for San Angelo, where, and how you get that done. Most likely it's going to be some sort of public-private partnership to make that happen. So that's the first one. Any questions on that before I go into the other one?
What are you seeking from us to make that happen?
I'm not asking for anything today. I just want to let y'all know what things are in the works. This particular one, we have already put out a request for proposals from and solicited that. We got back about 5 or 6, and we have narrowed that to 2. And then we have a team that is looking at that, and then we're going to be interviewing those 2 to see which one really rises to the surface, and then we kind of go from there. So we've started the process on trying to find the right fit for that consultant already.
Do you have a timeline for kind of moving forward with a more rounded plan?
Yeah, this particular one, there's a lot of players, so we're going to be having some discussions on that actually this week. And then from there, I suspect actually interviewing the 2 teams, that'll happen in the next month or so. And then from there, we would look at funding options for that study, and then take it to council to approve, and then start. So really, the group could get going on this, in my opinion, sometime toward the first of the year, once we select someone. So it's well in the works, since all the requests for proposals have already gone out.
Good, thank you.
The next one is a little unique for us. We don't always do this, and this is kind of looking at I call it the Northeast Sector Plan. So we have contacted and been in discussion with Westwood professionals to help the city look at some creative planning and some comprehensive civil engineering, specifically for, in this case, city-owned land that we have on the northeast side of town. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion about how that develops. You all have been involved with development of the industrial park there, but over time, that property has been kind of hit and miss here and there of pieces. You have things going for the jail, things going for the animal shelter, whatever. So this is to actually get them to come in, assess that property from all aspects, from stormwater, drainage, infrastructure, the land you have, and try to come up with basically a comprehensive plan of what is the best way to develop that property to where we get, the city, the maximum value and potential use of that land, instead of letting it develop sort of as things come along. So this is kind of unique, but I think very smart in San Angelo's behalf. We have a great asset in the land that was bought decades ago, and how do we make sure we use it for the things that Public Works needs, which is, for our wastewater, we have to retain a certain amount of land, those kind of things. So plan for the future, yet develop what we can in a productive way. So this, actually, we have received basically a proposal from them. We have sent that out to the departments. We sent it out to these guys to look and make sure we didn't mess anything in what we're having them evaluate. And we'll be pursuing that as well. So that is another opportunity to assist in funding for some things that I think are going to make great economic impacts to San Angelo over time.
Can we offer any other ideas?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Can we offer any other ideas for future projects for planning and development?
Yes.
Okay. I believe it's Twin Mountain Road that the plan shows, the city's plan shows to extend from Knickerbocker to the Mertzen Highway. That has been a major roadblock in the build-out of housing in southwest San Angelo. Can we explore ways that the city could potentially build and extend utilities along Twin Mountain Road to connect the Mertzen Highway and Knickerbocker, to unlock that area for development?
Do you have the offices at City Hall bugged?
No. Is that something y'all are discussing?
I thought I heard something about the possibility that a request or something along those lines, of the possibility of something similar to that, where the city would make the initial investment and then recover through some sort of special assessment methodology.
Yeah, there's been, we could look at something like that. If that's an area that we want to explore, you could look at something like that broader than just that spot. But I will say there have been some discussions through engineering and the public works standpoint as to how the city might adjust or change their current policies to allow for that type of thing to happen, working with developers. So they had a meeting on that earlier this week in general.
Okay.
I wasn't able to attend that, so I'll have to ask Shane, what came of that. That was more of an internal meeting to discuss. But basically that philosophy. But if you really want to look at a study that looks at broader, where are those locations? Where do we want to extend that? Then that might be something broader than just the internal policy.
Well, I think the greatest challenge clearly is paying for it. How does the city, if they bear the cost, how do they put the money out, and then how do they get it back? I know there have been talks about different ways to do this. There's municipal utility districts. I think they can be fraught with problems. I don't know what the best options are, but from what I've seen in my time on the Planning Commission and residing in this community, Southwest San Angelo has been our predominant growth direction, and I feel like we've hit a little bit of a stall because of the build out of that road, and we've got home builders that are buying these little tracts, these little 10-acre tracts, and kind of working around. They don't want to build Twin Mountain Road and extend those utilities. They want to build in that area, and I think there's resounding demand in that area. So I just, in terms of unlocking the potential of housing development, I think that single act could have a resounding impact on growth.
And I know Tommy's been pushing and talking about this one as well.
Okay.
On the council. But yeah,
Great.
So those are other options as well.
Let's talk about how we follow up on that idea.
Okay.
Do we want to tag that as a topic for the housing stakeholder group? Do we want to handle it a different way? I want to set an expectation for follow-up.
Well, and I appreciate that. That seems to me to be the best possible place to go. And I would ask if it would be appropriate to have Shane come up to the podium to answer some of these questions that we may not have an answer to yet. Is it appropriate for him to come to the podium at this time?
Yeah, if they're just now exploring it and don't have those fully, then, he can tell you that. But, so it may mean we need to come back at another meeting to give you more, but I know that they've looked at options, so, yeah. If you're
Aren't you
wanting,
glad
or
you
you want to
stepped
bring
in?
back the report later.
Aren't you glad you stepped into the meeting?
Yeah, wrong place, yeah.
Well, and
Yeah, well, and I was gonna say, I've been a part of that discussion this week, and I think we are looking at that, and there's some legal issues we're trying to figure out how to do it. I mean, some of that may be an assessment process or like voluntary development agreements, but we're exploring all those options and seeing how best to go about it, but.
Yeah, and we have, I mean, this isn't a new idea. This goes back even to Councilwoman Farmer back when she was on council and asking us to look at this from a public works standpoint. So we have been looking at the extension of Twin Mountain and what that would look like all the way through. And of course, there's a lot of issues and a lot of unknowns out there because it is large open tracts of land. Some of it, we know that there are some old family lands that probably are going to will have a harder time trying to get rights of ways through and things like that, and how we work and where we put the actual road and elevations and trying to get over the railroad tracks and some of those issues. And so we've actually started the process of actually working through looking at just from aerial pictography and LiDAR data and trying to start laying out the best track for that to take, and then trying to figure out what kind of costs would be associated with us going ahead and trying to purchase those rights of way, just go ahead and buy those fee simple outright before we start any land subdivision or any of that. And so we can actually get that permanent route fixed now.
Yes.
As we're starting to see a lot of development down 67 as it leaves town, we're seeing more and more development, and every time we get that development, it creates that extra level of, okay, how are we going to squeeze this in here? How are we going to squeeze a 64 or 120 foot right of way in here, 120 foot right of way in here? And so we're working through those processes now. And again, it's where do we find the funding to do some of these things? We think that initial phase, just the engineering and right of way purchase is going to, probably be in the $2.5–3 million range. Just for the initial outlay, and then depending on the topography and the number of either bridges or culverts or different things that we have to put in through there, because the topography is going to become difficult as we move around. We've got a price tag. We've been looking at a $25–30 million price tag to extend the roadway with utilities. So again, that's a significant chunk of change. even when you look at doing assessments and those types of processes, it's a pretty big challenge for a municipality to go in there and do those assessments, because we have to prove that whatever those improvements that we put in actually create the value, the extra value to the surrounding properties that we're assessing to it. So
Yes.
And so, I mean, there are some significant challenges to that. And it's really, I think it's going to come down to funding sources and to city council's appetite to help fund some of this, because I think some of the challenges are going to be great in doing that. We all agree that we think that will spur development.
Yeah.
In a hurry, but that it is a pretty steep price tag to get it there.
I will admit, I know that it's a big idea, but in terms of community impact, I think it would be at the top of the list. And with all respect, these other items I think are important, and you know, the Northeast sector and developing that is important. But you know, a lot of the conversation up here has been about housing, and you want to do something with housing. I think that road goes a long way to unlocking what's been a major challenge in this community. So
it is.
That's why I mentioned it.
Yep.
To that point, I think that the continuance of Valley View from both ends and the housing that is getting started up in that
Yes.
area is a good example of what's needed out there. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jay.
All right, any
no
other
good
questions for these gentlemen?
Well, I'd like to point out that the Northeast Sector Plan, I think, is a hot topic for us.
No question.
And I think we should be an owner in that plan. I think we should help drive the priorities. I think Rick's got a quote for a price, $270. Rick? And I think we should be right in the middle of that with both feet, make a big splash. And
It'll be somewhere between 162.5 and 232.5, based on what I got so far, depending on what components of you pick. It gives you some options, but ideally you should do all of it, which includes the water, stormwater, all that kind of stuff.
Would that include plating?
No, I'll have to look at that, but I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it just includes basically a master layout plan.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, what was that top number? 160?
Top was 232.5.
Thank you.
Can we be sure that's on a future agenda? In
Yes.
case we need to take action at the next meeting?
we can definitely do that. The more difficult than the financial side might be managing the additional stakeholders, which I think we need to bring to the table. I think the city obviously owns the land, but they're interested in economic development also. I think we want them to be part of the discussion, and the chamber, of course, is right in the middle of it. So we want to know what they think about making property attractive.
What is the land area size of the Northeast sector?
Well,
How much land?
we want to go from the south side of the existing industrial park all the way up north to the boundary of city limits on the way to Miles.
Yeah.
And-
Of course, Shane stepped out, he would have these.
How is this used now? Is it leased as city farm, leased out as farmland and grazing land, I assume, aside from city farm?
Some is and some is not. And so that recent annexation was the result of the contract we have that has not closed yet for the first data center. The second why don't I leave it at that?
Is all of this 3,000 acres owned by the city?
Yes.
Okay.
So, right now, it's a variety of things from
Yeah.
that to some of the leases. That's one thing we'll be looking at, how those leases are handled in the future. And that's one of the key components, because Shane needs a certain number of acreage for your discharge for your wastewater. So we have to keep that, and we have to plan for the future. But then you need to look at, okay, what else of the land is leased out? How much can we retain? What can we develop as, there's all kinds of things that may go in addition to a data center. There's a variety of other things. So how do you use that? Road frontage, all of those things to just maximize your return. But yeah, that's the key. It's a great asset for the city. It could be a game changer for San Angelo just on this parcel.
The other thing is that we're running out of available space at the industrial park. And so we need to think about, does that grow? How does it grow? What is our role? And this would be a key part of that. So we'll bring something back next time. It could be that we pay for it, we own it, it's all ours. It could be that it's just a funding arrangement with the city, and we ask the city to contract for it, and in exchange, we'll fund it. And we want lots of seats at that table.
Rick, thanks for bringing that. We appreciate it. Is there any other comment on topic E? Any public comment? No public comment.
To close that out, though, I'd like to say this was kind of an experiment to kind of shine some light on things that are going on. We'd like your feedback about that. And the idea that you may have things that you're aware of and ready to disclose publicly, we'd like that opportunity too. Do you want to see this kind of thing on the agenda in the future?
Yes.
You know how I feel about transparency and knowing what we're going to face before we get there. So, yes, absolutely.
Well, like Rick's comment earlier, we're tying this back to your comment. Some meetings ago, we used to grab these items and drive them. And so we're trying to honor that sentiment. And
appreciate it. Thank you, Michael. All right. Anything that we want to put on a future agenda from that topic besides what we've already pulled? And thank you for that.
So it's on,
Okay.
right?
Yes. All right. F, consider a resolution authorizing board president to negotiate and execute a memorandum of understanding with the city of San Angelo in an amount not to exceed $75,000 for partial funding of the Santa Fe Downtown River Parks Master Plan Design Services per RFQ PK 0425, a project authorized under Section 505.152 of the Development Corporation Act, and recommending approval by City Council. Presentation by Carl White. Welcome, Carl.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself from discussion on this item.
I appreciate that, Matt. Thank you.
Yes, I am asking for some funding, but this is for a very interesting, a very visionary and ambitious project overall. If you imagine Santa Fe Park and the adjacent river parks, Civic League Park, Sunken Garden Park, going on down the river, Bart DeWitt Park, those properties are kind of like San Angelo's Central Park. And we have different elements in each of those different parks. And we also have Santa Fe Park, which admittedly has not really been a nice property the last several years as a golf course. So we want to take a look overall at what could Santa Fe Park be in the future going into the next century, as well as how that park connects to the other properties adjacent to it. And for years, we've been thinking about what could Santa Fe Park be if it's not a golf course. It's currently a 9-hole walking golf course. Admittedly, it's not been running quite well. Basically, it needs more money put into it if we're going to add a new irrigation system, make it a green park. But could we do something different with Santa Fe Park?
Mr. White, unless I'm mistaken, there were some requirements on receiving that land when it was donated to the city. And are what you're looking at, does that include the discussion around those requirements?
Yes, definitely we have to consider what's the language in the deeds. And it's basically stated for recreation and playgrounds. So recreation, basically. So some years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, there was an idea also for an ambitious sculpture project for these parks, Santa Fe Park and other parks. That idea was tabled at that time, but it came back up last spring, and the idea was taken to City Council conceptually, and what the proposal was is to include, and it's not in the presentation, but there is a this handout here. This was presented to City Council that talks about this ambitious sculpture project. And what it is a series of 100, 120 bronze sculptures, lifelike or a little bit larger than life size, that tells a story about San Angelo's early history, early settlement history, and going up to probably the 1920s. This narrative and sculpture would be placed along the river parks and into Santa Fe Park. Each little story, piece of the story, would have a cluster of sculptures, 5 or 6 sculptures. So it could be a group of Native Americans that are scouting around. It could be early settlers coming into San Angelo. It could be Buffalo soldiers from Fort Concho out patrolling, and ideas like that. This concept was taken to City Council back in last spring, and Council authorized a resolution for a group who's leading this effort to raise funds privately for those sculptures. At that time, Council also gave direction to city staff to move forward with soliciting requests for firms that could help us develop conceptual plans for what these river parks could be tied together and what Santa Fe Park could be going into the future. We went back to City Council later in July. One, because there was a new council. We had 3 new council members. And also to clarify, what are we asking for? And so what we were specifically asking for was to go out for requests for qualifications to find firms that could help us with this process. So we did that. We got 11 submissions. We're in the process of, we've reviewed all those, scored all those submissions, and we've narrowed it down to 3 firms that we're going to interview in person on October 20th. And once that's done, we'll select one of those firms to take to council to request to hire. So what I'm asking for is part of the funds that are needed to hire this firm to help us with this process. So as you see, part of this includes the sculpture locations along those parks and into Santa Fe Park. Re-envisioning what the landscape would be with those sculptures incorporated into the landscape. And I mentioned the other part. This is the scope of the properties we're talking about. Zone A is Santa Fe Park, going up to the north, just behind the auto dealer, wrapping all the way around the North Concho River to include the little strip that's just below the YMCA. That's part of Santa Fe Park as well. Zone B is Civic League Park, where the International Water Lily Collection is. Zone C is the Sunken Gardens, where the Canna Gardens are, and where the Sculpture Garden is. And Zone D is the rest of the park properties, Bart DeWitt Park, going on down, wrapping around towards the convention center where the World War II memorial is being constructed. That's the scope of the properties we're talking about. Looking closer, Zone B, Civic League Park. It is our basically unofficial botanical gardens. Do we want it to better connect to Santa Fe Park? Do we want to make that an official botanical gardens? And what would that look like if we did? What enhancements would we add? We've talked about adding perhaps a bridge that would cross over into Santa Fe Park. Zone C is the sculpture garden and the cannon garden. How do we better connect with the river trails and with the visitor center? And then all the rest of the river parks. So that the scope includes what I've mentioned. The key part of this process is community engagement. We've got to make sure everybody's on board with what we do with this property. Taking in mind what's in the language in the deeds, what restrictions that we have, how can we use Santa Fe Park in comporting with the restrictions of the deeds. And then working with all these folks you see here to make sure we're all on the same page. And then part of this, a separate piece of this, connected conceptually, schematically, would be the landscape plans. How do you incorporate those sculptures into the landscape? Tied into this later would be the actual construction documents for those landscape plans. But we're not asking funding for that. That would be part of what the private fundraising would be paying for. So that's the scope of the project. We hope to go to council in November, the first meeting in November, to award a bid to hire the firm and to make sure we lock in the funding to hire them.
So clarify for me your request of us.
It's the resolution that has the 75,000. It's on the caption.
Okay, all right.
I've got, sorry.
Yes, please.
A couple of questions. The first one, these statues, will they depict any particular individuals, or are these just?
No,
No named individuals?
No individuals.
Okay. Second question I have is, and this is kind of where I have some heartburn on this, I'm going to be honest. This went to council, and council approved to go out for an RFQ. Was funding determined for this at that point in time? Was there a funding source established at that point in time?
No.
So again, in my honest opinion, cart before the horse, and now we're coming back here to a funding source. Okay, that answers my question. Any other questions?
Is there any other questions?
Just about the funding for the project, it's private, it's going to go up for private?
Yes.
Is there any commitments currently for that? I mean, is there any money been pledged or?
I believe there has, but I'm not in the loop with the private donors. Mr. Steve Stevens is involved, Matt Lewis is involved, that's why he recused himself.
Yeah.
There's a note in here in the presentation materials that you've provided that the sculpture garden is about a $30 million project. And the funding request of us is $75,000.
Yes, that's for to help us work up the master plan.
Okay, so $75,000 doesn't seem like a lot of money in terms of the scale of the overall magnitude of the project. And I'm wondering why it's not part of the process that's being fundraised for by private donors. Why is the development corporation being asked to pay $75,000 and not the folks that are doing the fundraising?
When I talked with the group initially, it was very clear they were interested in working on the artwork, developing that gift to the city. But as far as laying out this whole master plan, that was not something they were interested in paying for. So
Okay.
They made that very clear, from my understanding, in the get-go. So from that perspective, to a little bit touch on Steve's question, we have to go to council first to see if they were even interested in this project happening at all.
Sure.
Are they even interested? So that's why we went to council asking, here's the concept. Do you even like this concept, or are you saying, no, this is a no-go? At that point, they said, yes, it's a go, but we think for San Angelo's sake, we ought to plan this out once again instead of things happening haphazardly. To be quite honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, this area for the future of San Angelo tourism is one of the biggest areas you could have. As downtown redevelops The river right there along downtown is going to be your focal point, so we need to do it right. It's already good, but it can be even better. So if you develop the council said, let's look at the whole vision for this, not just the sculptures. The sculptures are a component of it. But what else do you want in the space? Do you want to develop Zone A as a botanical garden? What is that vision for the whole area, and how does that cohesively work for us and tourism? But yeah, they were very clear on the front end. They weren't interested in developing that whole concept.
I think the idea of redeveloping this river frontage is wonderful. Carl mentioned that we've got a 9-hole golf course that is not in very good shape. It hasn't been for a long time. That land could probably be utilized for a variety of other recreational uses, maybe a pavilion, as part of a greater city park development. I guess what I'm struggling with is, if we did nothing today, if nothing was done, the golf course would remain. If we put sculptures along the river frontage, the golf course is going away. And so the idea of utilizing this probably most valuable resource that the city has in this parkland to install sculptures along the river frontage is what's driving the need to consider redevelopment of the entire park area. And that's why I'm struggling a little bit with the funding request of us to pay for the concept. I personally would feel a lot more comfortable. The splash pad project is a somewhat similar but different request that we've had come through the Development Corporation in the last few months. And what's considerably different about that request was that it was a project that was fully vetted. The concept was firm. The request was to pay for something tangible to be put in the park system. Contrast that with what we're being asked to do today, and it's to fund a plan, an idea, a vision for the park system. If the request was to build a pavilion or to turf flat fields or something within the park system, I think that's a request that I would feel more comfortable supporting. But to fund a master plan concept that may or may not be utilized, we're not far enough down the road. We don't have a firm, tangible understanding of what's going to be done conceptually with this system, and I would feel more comfortable funding something tangible than a study, personally.
I also want to add that, and I can't say this as nearly as well as some of you might, it just feels like an unfunded mandate that.
Sorry, Tina Deersky, Director of Finance. I do just want to let you know that the full cost of the study is $150,000. I didn't know if y'all are aware of that, but the city is funding half of it.
Okay, well, the question that I have is, if it was that important to the city council to get it done and see it happen, then why wouldn't they be willing to fund the whole master plan? If you got 75, you probably have the other 75 somewhere, and why can't that be funded
Really,
by?
I'm not the finance director or this, but basically, typically staff's responsibility is to bring options to council for solutions. They very well may fund the whole amount. I don't know. But typically what we do is we try to bring them options of how to best go about it. We sit down with finance, look at the options. In this case, I believe they thought this is a a huge quality of life, in my opinion, interest for the city and how that asset develops over time. And so if that's a component that y'all think is something that is important, that the Development Corporation thinks important to San Angelo, then I think, yes, it's something you should play in. If it's something you don't think is, then you may not want to do that. Your choice.
I get the feeling up and down the table that we want to participate, but maybe not in that way.
Yeah, I agree, Rick. I think this is an enormously important project, and I think it would have a significant impact on quality of life in our community. I'd love to see this done. I just don't feel like we're far enough along in the process. Like I said before, I would rather fund something tangible with Development Corporation dollars than a concept that may go sit on a shelf for 10 years and never get done.
I understand that Mr. Lewis is down for public comment. Is there anything that we need to hear from you as to how this is being funded?
Matt Lewis, with the San Angelo Area Foundation. We're the physical agent working with the donor group that is raising money for this $30 million project. The $30 million is for the statues.
Okay.
That is, I think that was one of the questions asked, is where was that at? And I think Jimmy asked how much has been raised so far. There's been $5 million committed already. So it's moving along, and it hasn't even really, while it's been presented to council and accepted conceptually, they really haven't even kicked off major public fundraising efforts, which will really be going on next year. It's theoretically designed that as I think Carl talked about, they would be little vignettes of bronzes, and as funds are raised, you're able to build those out, because it's a 2-year process to cast a bronze and have it ready. So, I mean, it takes time. As you might imagine, 30 of these is going to take time. It's really important for this concept of public bronzes. It's really got to be, where does the city want to incorporate that? You really don't, the sculptor doesn't come in and say, hey, we want it right here on the river versus in the middle of the golf course versus over here. You really want that to be part of the park's master plan of how is the park going to be used in the future.
Yes.
And what is the Parks Department? I mean, and as you can tell by this master plan, it's huge, as opposed to the sculpture portion would be a smaller portion of that going along the river. So it is part and parcel, but since it is city parkland, the city, whether that's city council or COSA-DC or whoever, needs to own the plan as opposed to the sculpture committee that is doing that. But I can answer any questions you might have about the sculpture part of the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'll just step out there. Like I said, I'm not really sure I like the way it came to us, but it feels like to me that I would vote in favor of supplying the $75,000. If the city is supplying half of it, then I would be in favor of us for supplying the other half, just to show that we have ownership in this idea and support the idea. It might be that we fund the other half with some requirements, some expectations. If our concern is that it just sits on a shelf for 10 years, maybe that's part of our expectation. That if it doesn't get done and we don't start seeing some work, then we get our money back in one way or another. I don't know how to put that, but I'll let the smart people figure out that part of it. But my gut tells me we ought to back this plan, that it is something very important to our community, and we ought to back it.
One thing I want to point out is I do not think this is a request from council. So it is not something that you're being forced. This is, we can put all that blame right on Carl. Carl's just trying to figure out how to pay for, Carl is scrounging. He's trying to figure out how to pay for something that appears to be a priority for the city council. And, he's just trying to get it paid for. So I think that if there's an idea that this is being forced, I don't think that is reflected in the substance as I know it. So the other question I would ask, we're here talking about this today, and it appears that the sculpture project has motivated the need for this. Does this serve only the sculpture project, or does it serve other ideas or possibilities?
I'll let Carl talk on that, but I kind of piggybacking on that, there was some question about the plan, and I agree. There have been plans in the past who have been made and sit on the shelf. But I'll use the example of Chadburn. That was one, we had a vision, we said, okay, let's put some plan together. And then we saw the importance of, when we did the first one, we said, let's design the second one. And so when we had those plans from a staff perspective, it was so much easier to actually get it done, because we watch for grant opportunities, we watch for all of those kind of things. And it isn't always the one we've had. At any rate, it gives us the ability to actually try to get the project done. If we have no plan whatsoever, it's very difficult to go to a donor or for a grant and say, we've got this idea that's going to work. And they say, well, really, what's your plan? And so that's where I see this broader plan helping us bigger than any, because it brings in the community input. This one requires all sorts of community input, and that speaks volumes. So as we go along in those sections, I think it'll help us overall. But I can't totally disagree with what you said. I mean, that does happen.
Well, that's part of what I was fishing for. Y'all use these master plans as the basis for grant applications.
Yeah, and even selling to donors. In Matt's world, I can't very well sell it unless I can show them somewhat of a product of what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I want to be clear here. I like this idea a lot. I think it's a wonderful project. I just look at the Development Corporation dollars and the impact that they could make on this project. And I think our dollars should go to something that's tangible when this is a little bit more refined and firm than where we are at this point in the project. Clearly, there's going to be a lot of folks that are going to be working on developing this plan. I don't think the Development Corporation's being asked to participate in that. That's probably not the best use of our time and resources. And so that's why I'm having a hard time supporting, contributing to the concept plan.
So Travis, I'll echo what you're saying. I think this is a great project. I think San Angelo could, greatly benefit by this. I too have a hard time with this. I have a hard time saying that council didn't think to say, well, let's go out for an RFQ for a master plan. And, oh, by the way, how are we going to fund that master plan when we do determine who we're going to choose for this master plan? And so it does seem to me like it's coming to us, and I understand it's coming to us to determine different funding sources. But I'm like Travis, I think, and sorry, Rick went before you on the other agenda item, but, the Northeast Sector Plan or to me, that's more of a priority for our dollars than something like this that is being funded from the city, it's being funded by the general fund, from the Parks Department. I don't see why they can't come up the other $75,000. Or is this a tourism plan? Does this fall under the arts section in Tax Code 351? Can hot dollars be utilized for something like this? I just feel like COCDC dollars need to be utilized more for some other plans, or like Travis said, something that has a tangible benefit to this board. So
Yeah, if you came back to us in a year and said, we're going to build a pavilion so that people can have birthday parties or family reunions in this beautiful park that we're going to redevelop and construct, I'm in. I would love to see that. I just don't think that spending COSA-DC dollars on the plan is the best use of our dollars.
What is our next step?
Someone can make a motion and see where it lands, or not, and not take action.
All right. Let's,
I'm sorry, we're also missing a board member. I'm not opposed to tabling this item to allow us to digest this a little more, maybe have another month of conversations or thoughts, or, like I said, to get kind of hit with this like we did, like you had mentioned. Maybe I'll change my tune, but I don't want to kill this immediately without knowing all of the information. Great concept, great project.
I agree with you, Steve. I'd like a little bit more discussion. I see both sides. I think it would be great for San Angelo, and I'm like you, Steve. I don't want to kill this and put it dead in the water over 30 days of giving us just a little bit more time to digest it, and maybe on the sidelines, just ask a couple of questions and get a little clarity. I appreciate Matt's clarification that already $5 million is being committed. That's very substantial. And so this thing has legs, and I just think that we ought to give it a chance. Let's don't kill it, in my opinion, right now.
well, it seems to me we've got three options that we can get a motion in a second, get it on the table and see if it fails or moves, or the motion might be made that we table it, but we need to have a motion and arrive at some conclusion.
I'll make a motion that we table it.
All right, I have a motion to
Continue
table.
to the next meeting.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second. And if you will table this, will you say aye?
Aye.
And if you will not, will you say nay? All right, I believe we have a plan. Thank you very much, Carl, appreciate it. We'll see you next month. All right, Nora, can we make sure that it's tabled to the next meeting? All right. It's been a long meeting, y'all. Do you need a break?
Let's get it over with.
All right, let's get it over with. I heard it. Next up, we will be considering a grant to Clark's Auto Parts and Wrecking Service in executive session, an amount not to exceed $50,000 for repairs, equipment, replacement, and restocking inventory necessary due to the July 4th flood event under the project approved by the COSA-DC Board in our July 23rd meeting, a project eligible under 501 and 505 Texas Local Government Code and Type B Development Corporation for the retention of creation of primary jobs, and authorizing the board president to negotiate and execute all related documents. But I'd like for us to get some information before we go to executive session with this. Bob?
Okay. I had hoped that a representative from the applicant was going to be here, but apparently something has come up. So I'll go over the sort of preliminaries on it, and if y'all want to take it to exec, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
So this is the first of our flood recovery projects on the business side, first application. Board may remember that on July 23rd, the board approved a $1 million fund to be set aside to assist businesses in flood recovery after the July 4th flood. This is Clark's Auto Parts and Wrecking Service at 901 North Cecil. This is a before picture. Everything's nice. Notice how nice and neat everything is there lined up, and also pay attention to in the upper right-hand corner, the building that's labeled as the office. There's the office during the flood. And you can also notice that the cars are no longer lined up nice and neat. They sustained a considerable amount of damage. The building to the left of the office is not part of Clark's Automotive. That's owned by another individual. There's another view of it. And again, the office building is center left. And the highway in the distance is the loop. This is an interior picture of some of the damages they sustained. You can see the water, they said, was about 4 feet up in their office at the height of it. And then another interior picture. You see computers, phones, everything was pretty much jostled around, submerged, destroyed, whatever you want to call it. They also, the upper left picture there shows that at least a part of the building, this particular part is, I believe, the northwest corner of their building is sort of an L shape. You can see they've had some undercutting of the slab of that building. And then the right picture there is the debris that was on their fence, so you can see how deep the water actually got. And they also had experienced quite a bit of erosion from a portion of their property. They are an eligible NAICS code. They actually have 2 eligible NAICS codes. They have 3 existing employees. They have taxable property pre-flood of about $435,000 in assessed value. That does not include their inventory. They have an inventory of obviously used parts from their wrecking yard, but they also do sell a certain number of new parts as well. And based on the proposal at $50,000, they have about a 5-year economic, they have a 5-year economic impact of about $1 million to the city overall, just the city. That's basically the preliminaries on the presentation. If we want to go to exec for the rest of the discussion, I'm good with that.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob before we move? All right. We'll receive that report then, and we'll move directly to closed session unless there is public comment. No public comment. All right. Gentlemen, we will move directly to closed session, and I will remind you it is 11:01. So let's try to move with some alacrity through the rest of this meeting. Thank you.
Hey, Rick, if you'll read the closed session caption.
All right, thank you. Executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exceptions to requirements that meetings be open under the following sections. 551.087, Business Prospect Negotiations regarding Project Falcon, Phoenix, Hyperspace, Gateway Glass, Surge, Corn, and the project Clark's Auto Parts and Wrecking. So we are in executive session. Thank you.
4 hours is my maximum for anything.
You can say, motion to accept as presented by staff.
Okay.
It's a grant.
All right, so we come out of executive session, we have one item to deal with, and that's the Clark's Auto Parts and Welding. Can I have a motion?
Motion to move forward as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? If you will agree, will you say aye?
Aye.
If you're opposed, will you say nay? And it is done. All right. You have your marching orders. And in the meantime, if there are any other things that you think we ought to talk about in negotiating that contract, please do give me a call, and we can discuss adding or taking away from that contract. Any announcement and consideration of future agenda items? Nora, can you repeat to us what we have added to the next agenda?
All right.
Yeah.
You asked for additional information regarding the housing study that is in regards to, on page 100, I believe is what Matt said, if we can get that information completed. Also, discussing the task force and possibly polling stakeholders. You also wanted that on the agenda. You requested also that the housing study be added to the website. And as we were speaking, I had already forwarded all of you the PDF on the housing study, so that's done. Let's see here. Chamber, Goodfellow, they will be speaking about that next month. And as you stated, Rick, they have a list, so I've got that. Also, discuss about Twin Mountain Road, that item to be added to the agenda. Also, the continuing discussion of the Northeast as well. And then we tabled the support in regards to the park study. But then also, I know Travis had already given me an item as well.
Yes, I wanted to review the job description for the director position that we're posting and discuss the responsibilities and staffing, how we're gonna deal with Mr. Dane leaving us.
All right. Quick reminder, all Costa DC meetings are broadcast on Channel 17 Government Access at 8 a.m. every Wednesday. After each meeting, our next meeting scheduled for November 12 at 8:30 a.m. here in the East Mezzanine of City Hall at 72 West College Avenue. Do we have any more public comment?
I do.
You do.
Just to let you all know, so for our next meeting, we will be making the announcement of the business plan competition winners. But while this agenda, we're going to be working on this, so I ask that by November 4th before noon, if there's anything else that you want to add, please let me know, because I will have to post by the 5th, 5 p.m. before then. So, okay, just to let you know.
Do we have any other questions or discussion from members of the board?
I want to revisit that. Doesn't Veterans Day fall in there, and does that affect the timing?
No, hold on. Let's see.
It's 11/11.
I think the new state law said business days, not just days. And so we'll send it, let's check on that. I think that does push us back. Do you recall?
Well, the notice is business days for the meetings, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
November 4th is a Tuesday.
Right.
So it's one of our meetings.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, so you're looking at.
She's already got it worked in there then.
So the 5th, yes. We're good.
Okay.
Can I? Motion to
Can I?
adjourn.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to adjourn. If you will agree, will you say bye?
Who made the motions?